Hi, everyone. Welcome to Mission for Freedom. Happy Tuesday to you. It is March 11th, and it's absolutely beautiful here in Oklahoma. I hope you are having fantastic weather wherever you are today. We are broadcasting live on X American News. If you are not following X American News, you are missing out. Give them a follow on X today. We're also live on Mission for Freedom on the Rumble channel there and Annie Cyrus's Facebook page. Check us out there as well. And also, we're here for you. We're live. So we have an amazing metals and precious expert, Andy Schectman, today, and we would love to hear from you. That's why we're here to answer your questions. So please chime in, take advantage of this opportunity today to ask questions. We're here because of our sponsors and you. You know, it turns out this podcast gig thing is not free, and we are so incredibly grateful for you, our sponsors. Our listeners, and to our sponsors. Miles Franklin Precious Metals, Andy Schectman is one, along with our amazing producer, Annie Cyrus. She is another with lutfstudio.com. And so if you are in need of any of those things, we so appreciate you choosing our sponsors, our affiliates, because in turn, you're winning, you're getting great folks, and then you're helping us as well. So thank you so very much. We are building an army at Mission for Freedom, and you're part of it. So we are live every Tuesday and Thursday at 3 p.m. Central. So join us and tune in and ask your questions, and let's do this Mission for Freedom thing together. I cannot wait for you to listen to Andy today because there is so much going on. I guess I really wouldn't really know how to interpret the current events if I didn't have him to rely on for truth as it relates to the precious metals industry and geopolitically what is happening, because it all ties together. And that's really, I think, one of Andy's amazing specialties is that he's able to look at it from a macro level and connect the dots. You know, he started his company with his dad in the room the size of a closet. Has over 9 billion in sales. That's right, capital B. He is a world-renowned expert in the precious metals industry. Very good friends with Robert Kiyosaki. You know, he's the author of Rich Dad Poor Dad, also an expert in the industry. And so we're so beyond blessed and honored that he would choose to share his time with us today and talk to us about what's happening geopolitically and what we can do to protect ourselves and create a legacy and preserve a legacy for our family. So Andy Schectman, welcome to Mission for Freedom.
Boy, I'll tell you, that's always a tough introduction to live up to. You're amazing. Miriam, I really appreciate the kind introduction. Thank you very, very, very much. It's good
Well,
to be
thank
here, by the
you.
way.
The pleasure is mine. And I was really excited to talk to you today because last time when you were here a few weeks ago, we talked about Trump's tariffs and what that would mean for America, and you know, the narrative that is being injected into mainstream media is that, you know, maybe gold and silver, the prices are rising, and gold have been hovering around $3,000 an ounce now for a while. And so folks have been saying, you know, oh, gold is going up because they're anticipating the tariffs. And we took a whole hour to talk about why that's probably not the case. So if you guys missed that interview, scroll back on Rumble, find that interview, and get your questions answered. But today I wanted to talk to you, Andy, about something a little different. I couldn't help but notice on the news last night, Laura Ingraham was talking with Maria Bartiromo about what is currently happening about a projected looming recession. I'd like to take a look at this clip and then have you check it out and weigh in on the other side.
And Sunday morning futures. Maria, great to see you. Now, I noticed, everyone noticed, the markets noticed, that the president hesitated when you asked him about a recession. We all remember our history. We remember Reagan's first few years started off rocky economically. Is that where we're headed here?
Well, look, Laura, it's great to be with you tonight. I think what President Trump said yesterday was important because he gave us his vision of where things are going. Yes, he hesitated about the recession. I don't know if we're going to go into a recession this year. The president doesn't know if we're going to go into a recession this year. Here's what we do know. The Atlanta Federal Reserve said that they are expecting a contraction in the first quarter. We know what a recession is. It's 2 quarters of contraction. It's not any guarantee that we're going to get 2 quarters of contraction. But there's no doubt about it. Before President Trump even came into office, things were slowing down in a big way. I think what set the markets off today was the fact that we don't have the clarity in terms of where the tariffs are going, because President Trump has a much bigger vision than just 25% tariffs, and it's going to impact you over the near term. He's looking much longer term.
So I appreciate her. She indeed is talking about a macro perspective as well, and just thinking about this from the long term. But Andy, what do you think is really going on? Do you feel like a recession is looming? And do you think it's just going to be, for a little while and then a boom is coming?
I think a recession has been coming for quite some time. The metrics by which we traditionally gauge a recession, such as large deposits and inflows into money markets, well, we have record 7 trillion plus in money markets. The SOM rule, named after Claudia Sahm, economist, who, if I remember right, something to the extent of an increase of 50 basis points in the unemployment level, or 0.5% from the previous few months, I think is what it is. It's something to that extent. I haven't reviewed it for a while, but that was triggered, and that has predicted the previous 9 recessions prior to that. The reinversion of the yield curve, which is something we've seen, which has always been a precursor to a recession, like it's predicted every single one going back to the 50s. By every metric, I believe that is where we are heading. And I also think that this is what he wants. I'm going to answer it in a little bit of a different way. He wants it. Why? Why would he want a recession? Because we have $7 trillion in treasuries that are coming due in the next 6 months that would have to be refinanced at over 4%. So what he wants is exactly what Warren Buffett is telling the market. Warren Buffett is now at what? Let me see the number that I just saw recently. Warren Buffett now has $334 billion in cash as a cash balance, which is, which is ridiculous.
Yeah, especially for him.
He has 286.5 billion in U.S. Treasuries, and which is about 90 billion more than the Federal Reserve holds. You see, what Trump wants is for people to leave the stock market and to move to the Treasury market, which would lower interest rates on the 10-year, which would make our refinancing of this $7 trillion in debt a whole heck of a lot easier. At the same time, I think he's advocating for lower rates, and to get the Federal Reserve to acquiesce and lower the front end of the curve, we need to see a slowing economy. We need to see a recessionary trend. What's interesting to me about this is that if you take a look, for example, at the insiders, it's spooky, actually. I think at that level, the insiders are told what's coming. And if you look at the hedge fund exposure as an example, their exposure to the Mag 7 is at a 22-month low, and this has been going on for a couple of weeks now. You have, at the same time, guys like guys like Warren Buffett, who are massively loaded up with cash, and Jamie Dimon, who has sold record amount of JP Morgan, and done so within a few days of the NASDAQ falling off a cliff. Jamie Dimon sells 234 million worth of JP Morgan stock, and Warren Buffett is massively in cash. And then just like that, in fact, Jamie Dimon sold this stock on February 20th. February 22nd, Warren Buffett announces that he's got a record $334 billion cash balance. And then 12 days later, the NASDAQ 100 falls by 11%. And if you don't look at the NASDAQ, don't look at the Dow Jones, take a look at the Russell 3000, which is a much broader, a much more broad spectrum analysis of the market, of the economy. It encompasses both small caps, large caps, and mid caps, and it's
a better predictor, right?
All the businesses. If you take the average stock in the Russell 3000, the average stock is down 31% from its 52-week high. That's the economy. So the economy is slumping, and when you see the hedge funds, which are very, very well in tune to what's happening, have their lowest exposure to the Mag 7 in 2 years, something is telling you that they understand where we are going. And this is exactly what Trump wants. As crazy as it sounds, he made it very clear that there will be some short-term discomfort, right?
Yeah, what
That's
does that
Andy
mean?
Dufresne crawling through the tube, but you know what, to get to the other side in
Hmm.
the Shawshank, because
Yeah.
we have to go through that discomfort. He even went as far as saying, I don't watch the stock market. We can't be doing quarter to quarter. We need to think much bigger. And in order to get to the other side, we need to deal with the debt. We need to refinance that debt somehow. We need to be able to do it at a level that won't cripple the economy. So, yeah, I think a recession is coming. I think it's what he's engineering. I think it's what guys like Warren Buffett have been signaling. Why does Warren have massive amounts in U.S. Treasuries? Because that helps keep the 10-year yield down. And
Hmm.
why does the greatest value investor have record amounts of cash? Because he doesn't see value in the stock market. What I see coming, Miriam, is stagflation, which is the worst of both outcomes. That's higher levels of inflation coupled with little or no economic growth, slowing growth. And that's what the Russell 3000 is telling you. When all of the stocks are down 31% from on average from their peak, that's telling you that that's slowing. So yeah, I think a recession is to be expected. And then of course, we're even getting it that information, if you will, from the Atlanta Federal Reserve, because the
Hmm.
Atlanta Federal Reserve was predicting a month or two ago a 2.8% GDP for the year. They're now down to negative 1.5 on their estimate, which is down 4% from a month ago. So they're
Wow.
telling you, yeah, GDP is going to slow, the economy is going to slow. So everywhere you look, whether it be the hedge funds or the insiders who are selling at a 6-to-1 clip to buying, yeah, recession is looming. Probably will be here probably sooner than people think. Maybe it is already here.
Which and this is so interesting to me because if when I followed President Trump as he was campaigning, and what was one of, I mean, he said close the border, but he said he was going to bring back and strengthen our economy. He was going to bring back jobs to the United States. He was going to strengthen our economy. And for the average person, or for any person, I mean, the first thing you think of is a recession. That's not a good word, especially on the heels of how he's going to make America great again.
Well, because they're strengthening the economy doesn't happen overnight. And with the insidious, ridiculous, irresponsible mismanagement of our fiscal policy by the previous administration, I would argue the only reason we didn't see negative GDP growth under the Biden administration was because almost all this government spending, which nearly bankrupted our country, accounted for 30% of GDP. And now he's slashing that through Doge. And that's another thing. People need to see that Doge is really working. You need to deal with the systemic problems in order to make our country great again. You
Hmm.
can't just do it with, put lipstick on a pig. You
Yeah.
need to actually do the right thing. And that right thing is to figure out a way to fix the ills, if you will. And if he wants to do all of this stuff, it's going to come with some pain. And that's the bottom
Yeah.
line. It will. There is no way around it. Now, in the movie The Shawshank Redemption, you could argue the pain was crawling through that tube
Hmm.
of vile and stink, I think, as they called it. But at the other end, he's standing there with the rain coming down on it, and
Yes,
he,
it's
he
such a
got
great
but
scene.
there is reason to be optimistic. But if Trump were to be completely honest and say, we're completely screwed unless we go through some difficult times, well, I think that it wouldn't have been as well embraced. This is a guy who I would argue is doing what is right for this country, but he never promised it would be easy. And to
Yeah.
make America great again, you need to fix the irresponsible behavior that has come prior to this. And all of that debt, all of the misallocations of resource and capital, the distortions that were created through
Yeah.
not only massively suppressed interest rates, and then interest rates that spiked, and then the huge amount of debt accumulation. Look, we were accumulating $100,000 of debt per
Hmm.
second. One,
Oh,
two,
that's
three, and
so
keep on going. That's
crazy.
$1 trillion every 100
100
days.
days. Yeah.
And I always like to say, and I've said it on your show before, for people to understand how big a trillion is, a trillion seconds ago was 31,688 years ago. It took over 200 years to do it the first time. We were doing it, or have been doing it, every 3 months. And that's something you can't do and expect to retain world reserve status. Look at it this way. We owe $28 trillion in treasuries that are coming due by 2028. We take in 15 trillion in tax revenue over that period of time, roughly 5 trillion a year. Well, you're halfway there to what you owe just in those treasuries that are coming due, which doesn't take into account anything else in running the country.
Yeah.
So imagine you had 28 trillion in credit card bills coming due and you only have 15 trillion by that time to cover it. That doesn't take into account what you do for the next 3 years.
Yeah.
That's a problem. And so this is a problem of math. This is no longer a problem of politics. He said what he said, and I think he means it. But in order to get there, you got to crawl through that tube, period. There is no way around it. You can hyperinflate, you can default, or you can get more creative. And I think he will get more creative. I think you will see gold revalued to help mitigate that. We can talk about that. I think you'll see a lot of things that will shock and awe. And I think we've reached a point where if you don't do very unconventional, shocking things, you'll never fix this. Never. And as it is, I would argue the chips are stacked against us to really fix it without massively disrupting the apple cart. Any way you look at it, things are going to become uncomfortable, as he said in that interview with Maria the day before. Doesn't mean it will be forever, but these things need to be done in order to get our house in order. And I applaud him for having the courage to do it. It would be better if he was a little bit more open about it, but I guess by being open about it, he would be derailed because, you know, you have half of Congress bitching about the fact that Elon Musk is finding, you know, billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars of fraud. Why are they not applauding? Why are they not saying, yes, this is awful? Our children and our grandchildren, their futures have been mortgaged because of this. Instead, they're yelling that he's finding fraud and finding every reason to blackball him and derail him and his efforts and to vilify him. It tells you that half the country, at least in terms of our political leaders, have lost their mind, so much so that they don't stand up for a 13-year-old cancer survivor being offered
I know.
a honorary Secret Service award. Or, you know, as a father of 3 kids, 2 of which are daughters, if I was in that place and one of my daughters, God forbid, had been murdered by someone in this country illegally and half of the assembly sat down, I may literally take my shoes off and throw them at him and start swearing every 4-letter expletive I could think of and say, shame on every one of you.
Yeah.
You should all be kicked out of here right now. You're not American. There are some things that should just not be partisan politics. It's more about being American. And I think if he were truly honest about what he was trying to do, you'd have half of the country screaming just because they don't even know what the hell they're talking about. They don't know what mathematics is. They don't know what economics is. And a lot of them have been living fraudulently on what's been going on, you know, with what Doge is uncovering. And you know, this gets me all riled up when I think about it. By not standing for children who have suffered or have died at the hands of a murderous person who's in here illegally, goes to tell you the way that they think about life. And the fact that they're yelling about exposing fraud that's been perpetrated on all of us makes me wonder, do these people even have children? Do these people even have a soul? So yeah, I think he's caught between a rock and a hard place, because not only does half of the assembly, the Congressional Assembly, feel that way, the media, which seems to be owned by that side of the table, portrays him in a villainous, and Elon in a villainous manner, instead of thanking God and applauding his efforts for restoring some semblance of sanity and fiscal responsibility, which is long overdue.
Well, speaking of fraudulently spending our tax dollars, I mean, spending $500,000, $500,000 to advance atheism in Nepal, I'm appalled by that. I just
As
cannot.
everyone should be, regardless of what side of the aisle you're on.
Right.
We all pay taxes. We all have families that pay taxes, and you're destroying this country, thinking that money is something you just print. Well, that's the way they do think, because that's what they've done. Instead of having to work for it like we all do and pay our taxes because we feel it's our patriotic duty to, you know, to provide for the infrastructure and the safety and the military and the, you know, but in reality, we're giving it to LGBTQ operas in Ireland and spending millions of dollars on the effect of cocaine and meth on squirrels and that kind of stuff. I mean, come on. It's like,
and transgenderism on animals. I mean, give me a break. I mean, these people they're sick. I mean, that is just stinking sick. There's just no other way to describe that.
That's
And
right.
I wanted to ask you really quick. So I love that you are encouraged by what President Trump is doing. I did want to ask you though, do you think it's enough? Because I remember you being on my show previously and you said, Miriam, $1 trillion of debt we're accruing every 90 days or 100 days, 100 days. And you said they're going to cut out a few million here, a billion here, but to really truly balance the budget and take care of America, we're going to have to go through some pain. But you talked about how Medicare and Medicaid and some of these basically chronic payments that the government is handing out, like that's going to have to be touched. And he's saying he's not going, and veterans, taking care of our veterans, and he's saying he's not going to touch these things. I mean, what do you think about that?
It's almost $200 trillion. It's untouchable. And I mean, if you do touch it, that is the only way. And the funny thing is they don't even put that on the balance sheet because it's so embarrassing. All you ever hear is 36 trillion, but not the
Yeah.
77 trillion in Social Security, the 99 trillion in Medicare Part B, the 22 in Part D, the government military pensions that are bankrupting this country. He won't touch them. But getting our on balance sheet house in order is the first start.
Okay.
No, I mean, that's what makes me feel there has to be some form of financial reset. And that's why I do think that they will revalue gold to a degree, to a level much higher than people think possible, not only marking it to market because it's valued at 42.22 an ounce, which would add 7 or 800 billion to the balance sheet. But guys like James Rickards, who's very connected, says his number is 24,000. And he reaches that by taking a 40% gold backing, which ironically is what the Swiss used to employ and what the BRICS just came out and said we've agreed to in principle, a new settlement currency for transactions, not a BRICS currency, but a BRICS settlement currency, 40% gold backing, 60%, which is deliverable upon central bank demand, and 60% local currency backing. His number was 40%. He took 40% of M1 and he divided that into, which is the money supply, at the most basic level, and then divided that into the gold that is being held supposedly at West Point, New York, Mint, the New York Fed, Fort Knox, and also the Denver Mint. The 8,300 metric tons are supposed to have, and he comes up with 24,000. Now, the interesting thing about that, as crazy as that sounds, not only has gold revaluation happened many times, Roosevelt did it over my shoulder there. Nixon, when he closed the gold window in 71 and gold was at 35 bucks an ounce, the next year he moved from 35 to 38. And then the next year in 73, he moved it from 38 to 42.22, where it's still on the balance sheet today. But every $4,000 increase in the price of gold gives the Treasury General account $1 trillion. So at 24, you've just added $6 trillion to the Treasury General account, free and clear, which would give us latitude to start working our way. And as
I've heard you talk about that, how you said President Trump can actually call Jerome Powell at the Federal Reserve and revalue
and
gold.
say, do it.
And in one breath, he can completely turn things around. I wanted to get a question to you, Andy, real quick from Josh. Josh is saying, can America actually pay off its debt? I mean, can they actually do it, or is it too late? That's a great question, Josh.
It is too late. Completely. I mean, arguably, but unless we start slashing. But this gives us the ability to start working it off. And as Judy Shelton told me, she was Trump's nominee for the Fed in 2016, wasn't confirmed. And then, she's an advisor to him now, but she wants to issue gold-backed treasuries and issue stable coins off for those. And that gold would be redeemable in 50 years, 50-year treasuries. Now you have countries that, net, Miriam, since 2014, central banks have not bought any treasuries, net. It's been net selling in favor of gold, which has doubled the performance of the 10-year treasury over the last 25 years. But look at last year as an example. 10-year treasury up 4.5%. The price of gold up nearly 40%. No sanction risk, no inflation risk, no default risk. And she says he'll do that on July 4th, 2026, which is the 250th anniversary of the country.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, if you want to do that, you got to bring a lot of the gold home. And we've become a net importer of gold since November. We've imported over 20 million ounces, and we're draining the LBMA, which is now supposed to be a T+1 settlement. Trade day Monday, that's T. +1, that's Tuesday. Wednesday, where's my gold? Well, now they're saying it's 6 to 8 weeks or longer. Well, that's a problem. That's a
Yeah.
default. Things are heating up, but you would have to bring the gold home first.
Hmm.
Let the banks who have been short cover those positions here in the United States, and then jack the price up. They've got till July for that to happen. Can we
Hey,
pay
Andy,
it
we got
off?
to run
This
to
is a
break
good
real
start.
quick. We're going to run to break real quick. And then on the back side of that ad, when you come back, I really want to talk about what's happening with the dollar versus the price of gold. And I'd love for you to explain how the inverse relationship works and talk about that. So we're going to go to an ad real quick. And then guys,
Sure.
don't go anywhere. We'll be right back and bring some questions for us. Don't go anywhere.
You're still looking good.
I'm still feeling good. You know, I've got all your My Pillow products: mattress topper, bed sheets, My Pillows, towels, slippers, blankets.
I'm interrupted this commercial to do something I've never done before. Get 2 My Pillows absolutely free on orders of $100 or more. I can't do this forever, so get on board with this great sale today. Our best-selling 6-piece bath towel sets or kitchen towel sets, just $29.98. Our famous standard My Pillows only $14.98. Queens $18.98. King size only $1 more. Body pillows $29.98. Multi-use My Pillow 2.0s with pillowcase $9.98. Save $40 on our Spring Percale and Giza Dream bed sheet sets. Any size, any color. So go to mypillow.com or call that number on your screen. Use your promo code to save up to 80% on all My Pillow products. And when you spend $100 or more, get 2 standard My Pillows absolutely free.
Well, hello everybody. It's Andy Cyrus. Welcome to my art studio where all the magic happens. This is the station for painting, and that is the station for all the resin art I do. If you want to check out my art, all you gotta do is go to lutfstudio.com. Finish this painting, but I'm sure, or at least I hope, I'll see you at lutfstudio.com.
Welcome back, guys. Those are 2 amazing patriots right there, Mike Lindell and Ines Annie Cyrus. She's our producer as well. Master of many talents, actually, and artistry is one. And so if you head over to lutfstudio.com, you're supporting the Mission for Freedom broadcast and our incredible producer, and you can customize. That is a win-win for sure. And you can get our unique gift that nobody else has, and that's amazing as well. And then, of course, Mike Lindell, who's essentially almost lost his entire company fighting for freedom, election integrity. And they have a million different things. I used to think they just had pillows, but if you go to that website, mypillow.com, and use the code mission, use that with Ines as well for lutfstudio.com, you will save money at checkout on both of those websites. So mypillow.com and lutfstudio.com, and we will be pursuing this mission for freedom together. So welcome back, Andy. Thank you so much for joining us today on the Mission for Freedom show. Really appreciate your insight. And as we talked about before, I wanted you to explain, because I think this is something I know I did not learn this in school. Of course, mainstream media is not talking about this, but I'd like for everybody, if you have time, to go to kitco.com. And I want to pull up a slide here. This is what has happened with gold over the last 6 months. So if you look at this, it's really pretty, since the election, pretty much been a straight shot up. I mean, there's a little dip there that happened. You can see, right at the beginning of March, but it's hovering around the $3,000 an ounce range. I wanted to make something first clear before you explain that inversion relationship, Andy, and that is this. That little chart you see right there, you can type in 2006. That's when my son was born, 2006. And instead of it saying close to 3,000, it'll say $600 to $630 an ounce. That's about how much it was back in 2006. And I think, folks, because mainstream media is not talking about this, and we have proven factual data showing that these markets, the gold and silver markets, have been suppressed, I think folks think that they believe, maybe some of them believe the narrative that gold and silver is not wealth, that it's just like you should just shove it under your mattress. But you taught me, Andy, that in the last 25 years, it's had a over 9% annualized return, which is better than the S&P 500. Who is saying that? No one, because it doesn't project and advance their narrative. So I'd love for you to explain, when gold goes up, why is the price going up and up? Is it becoming more valuable? Explain that notion to us.
Well, and it's interesting too, because the dollar's been very strong, and it's been rising in the face of a strong dollar, which is impressive in and of itself. I mean, gold's been going up, you're right, 9.9% per year since 2000. When my son was born in 2000, it was just barely $250 an ounce.
Wow.
And so you're talking an appreciation of almost 1,000%. In fact, over. I mean, from then,
Wow.
and it's extraordinary. It's the tortoise, not the hare. It's got no mainstream pub. When you realize the S&P 500 with dividends reinvested has averaged about 9.6%, just a little bit
Mhm.
better. But everyone will tell you the only way to make money is to buy the S&P or to buy stocks, and the road to retirement is only paved with stocks and mutual funds. Not true. While at the same time, the biggest money in the world, the central banks, who are not only the biggest money but the most well informed, continue to accumulate at a level no one has ever seen. This is why the price has been moving up and up and up. Also, in the face of a dollar that ultimately is losing value, at least in terms of things like gold. Now, the strong dollar is measured against the Dixie index, which is a basket of worthless currencies. It's the nicest shirt in the dirty laundry hamper. It's the prettiest mirror in the glue factory. So my point is that it's an illusion of strength, but when you measure it against things like gold, you see that it has been losing ground year over year over year. It's doubled the performance of the 10-year treasury, and the big money understands it very, very well. So, in essence, what you are seeing is it's being gravitated, or levitated rather, by the smartest money in the world. And that all of that has been without any Western participation, retail participation. And it's because the people in the know always front run. They're always using the ability of misdirection through suppression in price, and a market that seems to go higher and higher every single year, the Dow Jones or the S&P, um, as a distraction, or Bitcoin or whatnot as a
Mhm.
distraction. At the same time, you have the smartest, most well-funded and well-informed, sophisticated traders in the world buying it nonstop, and
In
that
record
in
amounts,
and
you've
of
said.
itself
In
should
record
wake people up
amounts.
in
Yeah,
record amounts,
yeah.
but also repatriating it and bringing it
Mhm.
home. And what, again, most of the people in this country would have not a clue is that the United States has, for the most part, been a net exporter of gold my whole career. I've been doing this for 35 years. And now, since November, they become a net importer of gold, which is something, well, don't you think we should know about that? We've seen over 20 million ounces delivered to the COMEX market since November. We saw the largest delivery ever in the history of the COMEX market, nearly 6 million ounces in February. We saw JP Morgan deliver 4 billion in gold for a customer at a COMEX. Who's got 4 billion? What customer is that? In
Government.
February, we're seeing the largest outflows in the history of the LBMA, the London Bullion Metals Association, which is a 140-year-old exchange, ever. In fact, the single largest outflow of silver ever happened here last month, nearly 70 million ounces. So you're
Wow.
seeing a massive rush by the most sophisticated traders on the planet, who are rushing really fast to get physical possession of gold and silver. And, I guess it's difficult to say why exactly. Some people say it's the tariffs. Some people say it's the Basel III regulations that go into effect in July in the United States, which basically say if the banks have gold on their balance sheet, in order for it to be considered tier one, it has to be physically held unencumbered. Well, most of the gold that we see traded around the globe on these exchanges has been It's paper. It's 90% paper. Let me explain to you what I mean by that real quick, briefly. If we look in London right now, London has on paper, they say they have 279 million ounces of gold, right? That's on paper. Of that 279 million, only 36 million is available, which would mean 240 million or so belong to entities like the Bank of England or ETFs. So they have 36 million ounces. Let's call that the float, right? Standing against 380 million ounces in outstanding spot contracts. It's a 90% leveraged paper market. And if everyone stands for delivery like we've been seeing, then geez, we have a big problem. And now they're saying it's T plus 8 weeks instead of T plus one. So imagine you're a jeweler who has obligations to get that gold bar that you paid for months ago, knowing you get it in 3 days. Sorry, you'll get it if you're lucky in 2+ months. This is a problem. It's a default. This is what is happening, and I think we haven't even begun to see what it really means in terms of what the United States is doing. I don't think it's Trump tariffs. I don't think it's Basel III, and nor do I think it's playing the arbitrage where they could buy a contract in London and then sell it in the United States for a big spread. It was as high as $80 an ounce recently, which is never supposed to be like that. Well, the cost of shipping it over eats a lot of that $80. I don't believe that. I mean, there's some of all of that, but I think it's much deeper. When Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, when he was running a hedge fund prior to becoming the Treasury Secretary, guess what his largest holding was? Gold. And when you have Judy Shelton, who's advocating for 50-year treasuries backed by gold. As an advisor to Trump, it's becoming more and more obvious to me that this is something bigger than what we're being told and very American-centric. My guess is they're reshoring the gold because they have something big in store for it. And after all, what is gold? It's the only other tier 1 reserve asset in the world, as reclassified by the most powerful bank in the world, the Bank of International Settlements, in 2019. This is why the central banks have been gobbling it up in favor of the other tier 1 asset, U.S. Treasuries, which have been weaponized, which are being inflated, which have the default risk. So they're saying, well, geez, tier one, I'll take gold. It's doubled the performance of the Treasury and has no risk. This is why they've been accumulating it. And the Trump administration, I believe, is smart enough to understand this. And the moves that they are making speak to something big coming for both gold and silver, probably more so for gold in terms of its pegging to a new system. But potential-wise, I don't know if there's a better asset on the planet than silver right now.
Really, and at almost $30 an ounce. I mean, I think those listening, that would be a great way to get into the market, is to start with silver. You can always, buy gold with that later too, or just accumulate it. But I want to get to some more questions.
Sure.
Could gold ever return as the global reserve currency, world reserve currency? Yeah.
I don't think it'll be the global reserve currency, but I think it will stand behind a new system. And I think they have to revalue it to a much higher level. After all, it's crazy. It's almost unbelievable. But gold is held on every Western central bank balance sheet in an account called the gold revaluation account. And you have the head of the Dutch National Bank been screaming, we need to revalue gold for 2 years. You have members of the German Bundesbank saying the same thing. In Europe, it's all valued at $35 an ounce. Even marking it to market at 29 and change would drastically impact their balance sheet and their ability to offset liabilities with assets. But guys like James Rickards, who is saying, yeah, let's put it at 24,000, 40% gold backing here, and peg it to a new system to inspire confidence. And then Judy says, let's sell treasuries, peg to gold, and issue stable coins off of it. So that, again, you marry blockchain technology and a commodity like gold, the only other tier 1 asset. And instead of allowing it to be redeemable like this coin was and this $20 gold certificate in 33, you use stable coins pegged to it that enable you to do the exact same thing. Now, Judy Shelton is saying it would be redeemable after 50 years. If you look at the BRICS currency, it's redeemable to other central banks, not to you and I. But we are beginning to see gold take a more prominent role, or at least appearing to be, in setting the stage for a new monetary system. While it in and of itself will not be the world reserve, I think it will stand behind those currencies or currency that attempt to be the world reserve, whether it be the continuance of the dollar or maybe even the BRICS at some point that want to challenge the Western hegemony. And they're not going away no matter what anyone says. We just saw this week Iran, China, and Russia do joint naval exercises. We saw Indonesia become a full member of the BRICS. They have the largest nickel deposit in the world. I mean, so things are moving behind the scenes, and they don't want to be as transparent about it as what they were before Trump came in. But yeah, there's a lot of things that are signaling gold is going to be remonetized, revalued. Even Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, said we want to remonetize the balance sheet of the U.S. government. Look at their balance sheet. They have nothing to remonetize. Their largest asset is student debt. The second largest asset is military. You're not going to monetize those. You could monetize their land, put amusement parks or lease it or hotels. You could monetize the gold held in the gold revaluation account that's now flowing into the country. I don't know. I don't know what they have in store for us, but it seems bigger than what the analysts are telling us.
Something's happening. Absolutely, something is happening. Stephen Mix, so good to see you guys on here. I see stocks down 10% over the past month, while gold, silver, and miners up 1% or more. A solid uptrend. A solid uptrend starting for the metals. He's wondering, is it a solid uptrend that's starting for the metals?
I think, let's see, gold over the last 30 days. Come on, pop up. So gold was as low as 28.57. It's up $100. So yeah, he's right. That's about 3%. It is a solid uptrend, but if you look closely, I mean, it's been outperforming everything traditional for the last several years, quietly moving up and up and up and up. I mean, let's look at it from a standpoint of where it was even 1 year ago. The low 1 year ago was $2,155 an ounce, and today it's $2,916. So, it's up $800 just about in a year. So you're talking 40% in a year. No one talks about that. My mentor, God rest his soul, Richard Russell, the smartest human being I had ever met, especially as it pertains to finance, said if you make 7% a year, you're a rock star. You will go down in the Hall of Fame of investing. And gold moves up 40%, but that's not sexy enough for
nobody's talking about that.
Mentality of making triple-digit gains every year. That doesn't happen. Largely that happened because of the massive amount of money injected into the system and high-frequency trading on the computers that are able to make this whole system kind of gamed. And I think that it's created a whole generation of gamblers and people who think that's normal to get those kind of returns instead of doing things. Look, Austrian economics says you invest, you save, you invest, and you reinvest. It's not like you put some money down and you make a life savings worth of money in a week or a month and then just move on. That's what you have with cryptocurrencies and with these Mag 7 stocks, that people have been indoctrinated into thinking that's normal. I mean, I'm doing this for 35 years. Either everything that we've learned before this can be turned upside down, or people need to realize that gold and silver are outperforming everything once considered traditional and doing so handily and getting zero attention by the retail. Why? Because it's being moved by the smartest money in the world. And what is gold but the only other tier one reserve asset in the world? People need to understand this. Why does the media not tell us this? That should be something that is screamed from the rooftops of every major news station, every major financial station, that gold is the only other tier one status. And what's been the only other tier one? U.S. treasuries and dollars. Gee, don't you think the American people should know that? Well, the central banks know that. The sovereign wealth funds know that. The Chinese know that. And gold will have a more prominent role. I think people need to look at it as wealth more than an investment. It will outperform most investments. But I think you have to look at it as wealth. That is outlived 2 world wars and German hyperinflation and the Great Depression and every pandemic and everything the world's ever thrown at it. And here we are 6,000 years after it was mentioned hundreds of times in the Bible. And guess what? The smartest money in the world is voraciously accumulating it. And more importantly than that, give it to me. I don't trust any of you. I want it in my own possession. They're repatriating it, removing counterparty risk in this very systemic world that we live in. I think there's something to be said for that as well.
Well, that's why I cashed out my IRA. I know people thought that's, taking the hit. I'm like, you know what? I want to be able to get it quickly. I don't want it in a vault in Dallas personally. I want it close by me so I can grab it and have it. And I think it's really important for folks to understand that paper money, it's a fiat currency. And the word fiat actually means declaration. Like the government has declared this paper has value, but it's not gold back. They can also undeclare it tomorrow. I mean, why would we hoard something that the government just says has value? I didn't trust them during, 2020, and I'm not trusting them. They said safe and effective for the shots and people have died and been permanently maimed. I'm not trusting them that they say their paper money has value because it's losing value, like you said. I did want to reach out and talk to Kelly. Thank you so much for joining us. Kelly Rice, she says, could the government ever confiscate gold again like in the past? I was just talking about that on a podcast, and so many Americans, Kelly, thank you for sharing that. So many Americans don't even remember that confiscation.
Yeah, here it is right here. April 1933, Roosevelt's first act in office. I've been very consistent on this one, and this is something that's worth talking about. I've said for a long time they'll take the ETFs, and you have the two big ETFs, GLD and SLV. GLD is one of the largest stockpiles of gold in the world, and SLV is probably the single largest stockpile of silver in the world. And it's interesting, always really aggravated me, Miriam, that JP Morgan, who, I used to say forever, the markets are manipulated. I get a lot of pushback from that. And then lo and behold, JP Morgan pays a $920 million fine for manipulating the metals market. Their head trader, who I was at a conference with and sat at a lunch table with about 80 other people, he's in prison, Michael Nowak. But here's the interesting thing. They're still allowed to be the custodian of the world's largest silver trust. But lo and behold, HSBC Bank has been the primary custodian of GLD. So it's BlackRock and SLV. BlackRock and JP Morgan hold SLV. But guess who just came all but the exclusive custodian? There's about 2 million ounces of gold held by HSBC. And yes, you guess where I'm going. JP Morgan is now the custodian of GLD. So you have the ultimate fox guarding the hen house. They are the custodian of SLV and GLD. And
Andy,
you
I
want
want
to talk
to
about
see if
gold
you can explain
confiscation.
something. Explain something real quick. What is GLD? And we have another question from Steve here, and I want to get to him. But really
Sure.
quick, for those who don't know, can you explain GLD and SLD just real briefly?
GLD and SLV are the ETFs, electronically traded funds. They're a proxy instead of a stock. Every share is supposed to represent a corresponding amount of gold or silver held in an account custodied by JP Morgan. JP Morgan now, because of this, holds more gold in two vaults, one in London and one in New York, that they control than the majority of all the G20 countries. They are financial accounts where you and I can never take possession of the metal, ever. We get paid back in cash. But the interesting thing about it is we've seen 16 tons of gold pulled out of GLD in the last few weeks. Well, the talking heads say, well, that's people selling to profit taking because of rising interest rates and a strong dollar. No, it's not. It's called share redemption by the big banks that fund it. They can pull the gold out, and they do it very opaque. They take their shares, they redeem them. It looks like people are selling because the gold's disappearing and the share flow is contracting. They're pulling the real metal out. You and I can never do it. So you have two funds that attract all the big advisor money, because an advisor makes money. They don't make it on trades anymore. Those were stockbrokers. Now they make it keeping under management, right? Under the umbrella. And you pull that money out to buy physical gold from a company like me, you've just taken money off of the plate of your advisor. And he's being, no, don't do that. Buy GLD and SLV. That's what you want. And so if you have GLD and SLV, you track the price of it. That is all. So the government, instead of going door to door to my house and your house and the people who represent the pimple on the elephant's rear end, the very 1/2% in this country who actually own physical metals, they can take the big swath of gold and silver held by who? JP Morgan, who paid a $920 million fine for manipulating the market, who is in essence an arm of the government, have it all held in two vaults, and take it and pay everyone their fair share price and look at the world and say, what? Well, we didn't break any laws or infringe any civil liberties. To go door to door to people who have NRA stickers on their door and are not as patriotic as they were in 33, that tiny little take would not be worth the backlash here domestically or globally when you can close those two funds and the prospectus tells them they can do that you have all you need in one fell swoop, just like that, held by the cartel banks that suppress the price. So no, I don't think they'll confiscate it. I think they would confiscate the ETFs long before they would ever try something like that. You have communist China and Russia openly promoting and endorsing through savings plans issued by the state to own gold for their people. If we did that, it's game over.
Yeah, for sure. Steve, I hope I don't butcher your last name. Thank you so much for joining us. DeHaunt, he says, what will silver be at in 2026?
Well, today, let's see if it closed. It's not closed yet, but we're at $33 right now. And that's the line in the sand that they've been fighting for a long time. Every darn time it got there, bang, they hit it down. Now we'll see where it closes today.
That's a big deal.
33, and it closes in 6 minutes. Now it's $32.99. They're trying real hard to keep
bring it down.
If it closes above 33, we're off to the races. And I don't know how high it goes. I think anyone that claims to know how high it goes is guessing. One thing I will tell you, Miriam, is that markets go higher to the upside than anyone thinks possible, and to the downside, they'll fall further than anyone thinks possible in bear and bull markets. But here again, the largest single day outflow ever in the history, or monthly outflow in the history of the LBMA, of 70 million ounces, massive outflows, and coming into the COMEX, huge deliveries by sophisticated. And I'll tell you, it would be easier for someone listening to this to send me a check for $50 million to buy silver than it would be to take delivery off of COMEX. It's not easy. You better be really sophisticated and tied in. And so what we are seeing is the biggest money in the world, not just buying gold, but buying silver. India's bought 900 million ounces in the last 5 years. That's more than the LBMA and the COMEX combined. So there is the reason silver has been suppressed in a nutshell is that there's 500 ounces of silver in the cone of every Tomahawk cruise missile. And you can look at and Google that, and you can look at all this high-tech weaponry and high-tech aerospace stuff that the military industrial complex needs. So they have been holding the price of silver down through massive rehypothecation. In London, as an example, I know you're tight for time here. In London, there's 278 million ounces of silver that is being traded against 2.9 billion ounces per day, which is 3.5 times the global mine supply. That's 12 times the amount of trading silver certificates or contracts versus the float. And if everyone stands for delivery, we have a problem. And on COMEX, it's been the same thing. It's been rehypothecated 2,500%. That means 1 out of 25 has the actual ability to get the metal, and the other 24 get cash settled. It blows everything up. So the bottom line is, I believe the only way to manipulate a market over time is to push it in the direction that it is going. And the West has been doing that for a long time. I think Trump administration knows the jig is up, because all of these countries and sovereign wealth funds and family offices and wealthy people are saying, we're not good with taking the contract anymore. We want the physical metal. And just like Bernie Madoff ran a great shop until everyone asked for his money back or her money back, that's what we see here, a Ponzi scheme unwinding right in front of us. So arguably, it could go a whole heck of a lot higher than we can all imagine. I don't know when it happens, don't know what triggers it, but I would argue it's happening right now. So watch it in real time rather than guess. If I had to guess, I'd say north of $40 easy. But once it gets through that, there is no resistance. So it could go as high as one could imagine. And if you look at the ratio, gold to silver, geologically right now, it's 7-to-1. So if you take, that means 7 ounces of silver for every 1 ounce of gold geologically. If you take gold at $29.20 divided by 7, if tomorrow morning silver was at $417, that's not irrational. That's the geologic ratio. And if you take the 150-year price ratio, let's call that man's ratio. God's ratio is the geologic ratio. 7 ounces of silver for every 1 ounce of gold currently in the crust. If you take the roughly 42-to-1 that has been because gold's role is money and silver industrial, take $29.20 divided by 42. That's $70.
And on that note, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry we ran out of time, but that is so, I cannot wait to have you back on to finish this. But
I'm sorry.
You're good.
On a rampage.
I love it. I could talk to you forever. But Andy Schectman with Miles Franklin, go to milesfranklin.com or call me at 1-833-213-7333. And there are specials. We can talk. We can get you in some gold or silver, or email me at missionforfreedom@milesfranklin.com. I'm an outside broker, and we can get you some of the best pricing in the nation. Thank you
And I'm
guys so
honored
much
to
for
have
joining.
you.
Thank you, Andy. What
Honored
a
to have you
blessing.
on the team. I'll see you soon, Miriam. Thank you. Stay well. I look forward to picking up with you where we left off.
Yes. Thank you, Andy, so much. God bless you. And thank you all so much for joining. Thanks for your questions, and have a wonderful day.